All right. Well, welcome back to the long game. It's episode 3 here. I'm Brent Schaefer, and I've got Tyler Pearson along with me. We are certified financial planners looking to talk about finance. Tyler, what do we want to talk about today?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, 3 episodes in, I need to get a new headset. I got to look, more professional. But I think today's topic should be what makes a good client advisor fit. And I guess I'll just pose that as a question, and if you want to.
It's important, right? The advising relationship, and again, it's relationship. It's not like a transactional thing. Pepsi versus Coke, those are products that you buy and consume. Do they understand what you are doing for them, the reasoning behind all of the suggestions that you're making, kind of the logic behind it? That's why fit becomes important. What have you experienced? You just got started, but have you noticed some things of like, oh man, I mesh well with people or don't mesh with people? Like, have you bumped into any issues yet?
No, I haven't bumped into any issues per se. There's certainly people that you know are a fit right away, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they feel the same way, but you know that you get along with them as a person first and foremost. And I think that's the first place for whether or not they'll be a good fit. And then of course it's moving into, at the client advisor level, are they willing to ask questions? Do they make sure that they understand why you're recommending the things that you are recommending? That is where I start to see that trust really grow in the relationship is, hey, I understand why Tyler's, telling me I should do this. And the foundation of any good relationship, be it, a business relationship or a personal relationship, is trust. And so if you can build a trust with a client, and the client trusts you, you trust the information the client's giving you,
And it's
long-term
almost like
fit.
there's this happy medium. Naturally in the beginning, when you're kind of getting a feel for the client, right? There's going to be more questions and you're going to have to discuss things, a little bit more in depth. And then as time goes on and you meet more frequently, then it almost not like it goes into autopilot, but like the trust does get built up. And kind of with some of the clients that have been here longer, it's like, okay, actually, no, they trust the recommendation, but let's just slow down and make sure that like we thoroughly explain what we're doing here so that they understand.
Right.
But again, the good relationship takes time to continually set expectations. First off, it's the advisor that's willing to, as soon as they say yes, it's like, hold on, I want to make sure that you understand what I'm doing for you, why we're doing this, not just like, oh, cool, I've got this, like, they're good to go, like, let's just plow ahead. So it's the advisor that's patient
Right.
enough to walk through the steps and make sure that, both parties thoroughly understand. Then it's also the client that, to kind of let go and be open to the recommendations. Granted, like, all clients can bring their own things to the table. And this, like, maybe it's an idea that I've heard before and I'm still going to go and research and walk them through and like, hey, thanks for bringing X, Y, and Z idea to the table. Here is why people find it appealing. Here's who it fits. And at that point, it's like, maybe you're not a fit for it. We kind of work through it together.
Right. I always say when people ask, what kind of clients are you looking for? It's only a couple things that come to my mind right away. It's number one, people that are looking for a long-term relationship. It's not supposed to be a transaction. It's supposed to be building a relationship for the long term. And then two, I really like to build trust for the first couple of years and get to the point where hopefully I'm the first phone call for any financially related. And then I'm willing to go work with or an attorney if need be. But kind of take that consultative approach where, hey, I've got a question. I need to call Tyler. And I know Tyler will either know the answer, find the answer for me, or reach out to someone that's an expert in the field that I have a question in, and we can, have a discussion about the pros and cons of whatever decisions are being made. And so I think that's a pretty good segue as we talk about what makes it a good fit for a client and an advisor. But then number two, once we get to this point where we know the client's on board for a long-term relationship, obviously that's what we're here for. We continue to support those clients for the long term. Is there anything specific that you focus on?
I think naturally it's just doing the fundamentals well, like the annual check-ins, annual review. How's the budget? Are you getting enough? But just to focus on retirees, it's like, hey, are your distributions adequate for your lifestyle? And again, reminding them of the strategy, different areas of the market, how they're performing, where the valuations are at, what are expectations going forward. once we kind of get to that, and then usually there's a regular cadence, checking tax returns, the whole deal of what goes on. If there's a financial question in any realm, right? Been like, hey, I'm going to pull money out of my accounts. I need to call and talk to Tyler. Do you know of anybody in the area? Or have you heard of anybody? It's been said before, it'll be said again. Money is a tool that we can use to enhance our life. Not that we're like well versed in flat out all things, right? Mostly personal finance, but if it's going to be a major purchase that's going in, we had a call today of a client that's going to replace the roof, right? Like reaching out to our network and trying to find good quotes for roofers. Like our service exists so that we can help clients live the best version of their lives. And if things on that magnitude financially are going to happen, we want to be involved. I think they pick up the phone and ask for a distribution. And they're 7 steps down the line of purchasing a new house or a new car or something like that, and it's like, hold on, wait. I mean, I would just prefer to walk them through you know let's set up the parameters, let's see how everything goes. I think that's a roundabout way of saying that how we support clients long term, the fundamentals, the annual reviews, the check-ins, education, letting them know where they're invested, but then even beyond that, we're happy, we're excited to be involved in all aspects of their life, when it comes to big life changes. Do you have anything to add to that?
I probably do, but the majority of what we try to do for our clients, the annual meetings are a must to make sure that you're in front of changes, right? Sometimes I think it's as simple as reminding them that they're on your mind, and we're here, just a phone call away if they have questions. And so that way they just feel comfortable picking up the phone saying, hey, Brent, I'm thinking about replacing my roof. How's that going to impact my savings for this year? And do you happen to know anybody in the roofing industry? I think that's an underrated side of what we do is intertwined with a handful or with a lot of community members. We do know, a lot of the good businesses, probably some of the businesses that you might want to be careful doing work with. But then the only thing I would actually add to what you said was the adaptability. And so setting expectations with clients from early on is helping their long-term success because they know what to expect, but we can't predict what's going to happen. And so when needing to replace a roof or any number of emergencies, having a plan that's adaptable and having somebody you can call and walk you through those changes, I think is important.
Yeah, and you brought that up, being adaptable, right? Like the plans that we create, the right capital analysis, it has the Monte Carlo simulation in there. And clients, as they're going through those market events, right? Like we had with the tariffs, it's like, oh man, things are going sideways. Like actually, market events have happened before. When they happen, get baked into the numbers. We've seen it before, we'll see it again. And you might not think that your plan is ready to handle a market decline of 10, 15, 20%. Actually, the software, those numbers are baked in there.
Yeah, I was working with a client and the advisor that they had used previously managed investments. That was the majority of what he did. The reason they started asking me more and more questions was because they're a month or two away from wanting to retire, and all of a sudden they're seeing this market event. And even though now it's as good as recovered, you know, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, they're getting worried about, well, I thought I was able to retire, but now, my portfolio's dropped by 8, 10%, and that's concerning to me. And those are, I think, kind of the hand holding in areas where having someone that you truly trust from a planning perspective to call, and then I can show them, we planned for this. In this case, they think we had done a good job saving and we're going to be okay. But I can go run a stress test and say, hey, not only are you okay at the current market decline, but what if markets decline an additional, 10 or 15%? How would that look for your scenario?
People get worried. And gosh, another LinkedIn post that I saw was, I think it was from the dot-com bubble through, no, that's what it was. It was the dot-com bubble through 2020, chronologically how the returns played out. And then it was the inverse, of the returns.
Yeah.
And in, the regular case, portfolio was able to sustain. But then when the returns were reversed, the portfolio ran to zero. As those market events happen, right? Like hindsight's 2020. I guarantee they picked that example just to cherry pick it, just to use it. But supporting clients long term, like when we meet annually to go over things, the numbers get updated, market expectation, return expectations change. It's not like a set it and forget it kind of plan. We refresh these things and
Right.
we're able to, like in the case that you were talking about, it's granted they did adequate job to save and retire and be prepped. If they
Right.
were down 8 to 10%, it sounds like they were a little bit more aggressive than the dip that our clients experienced. When you sit down and talk with somebody, you're just able to reframe the situation, say, hey, maybe distributions, maybe it's not $100,000, maybe it's 90 this year. Something's got to give somewhere, right? When
Yeah.
you're able to assess that, and you're just that much closer to being able to give them the optimum result.
Well, and at the highest level, I think it's not even necessarily just what can change, but to me, like 95% of the time, it's just having the voice reassuring you that we're planning for this. And a lot of the time, the emotion is really what drives decisions. It's nice to have somebody who can kind of give that objective reassurance. It's like doctors that don't live a healthy lifestyle. I'm sure that there's financial advisors that struggle with certain financial decisions because it is emotional when it's your own money. So, it's good, even financial advisors, to talk with other financial advisors, get that objective look. And so I think it's funny.
I do the bounce ideas off of each other. And I think, again, why we're sitting here talking. So the next point, as we transition the conversation here, and funny that you mentioned the doctor thing, interest being unhealthy, because sometimes when I sit down and talk with people, I can tell it's like pulling teeth from them, right? Like, hey, where's the budget? Do you have any outstanding debts? Like, do you have credit
Yes.
card debt? And they're like,
Sometimes it's almost uncomfortable.
yeah,
Like you want to help, but it's
yeah,
like you're
well,
asking some pretty prodding questions.
not even that it's,
Yeah.
hey, come on, man. I'd rather you tell me about it and we're able to get everything above board out on the open. And now I know
Right.
all of the problems and then I can really help like devise a plan. But, I just thought that that was funny that you mentioned the doctors being unhealthy. And, sometimes people feel like, granted, new in the relationship, but there's just that kind of
Right.
guardedness that they approach the relationship with.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I think it's becoming more and more common in the younger generations to be a little bit more open about what's going on financially. But for people that are 50, 60 years old, and their parents, it was almost a taboo subject to talk about what's going on in other people's financial lives. And so it is important that we can get that information out in the open, and it helps us make planning decisions. It's also obviously, you ran into it where sometimes people are going to be a little bit more hesitant, and it's just trying to you're coming from the right spot, but just here to try to help. That's all it
Hmm.
is. I always think it's funny. I know we use the doctors as an example all the time because I think the two fields can actually correlate more than you might think.
Yeah.
So I guess the last thing to touch on was the trust we talked about at the very beginning, to go full circle. Trust and accountability kind of is a two-way street in our industry. We're trusting our clients to implement the stuff that we're advising them to do. Then we try to hold them accountable. It's important to their financial health that they do that. But obviously, from a client perspective, I would imagine that they continue to follow up with us.
Yeah, I think so. I know that with clients, genesis of this call was advisor client relationship, what really works. I've sat down with people, we've discussed like, hey, we got to get some life insurance quotes. We got to get an estate plan in place. Like we got to do these things. And, I'll periodically follow up with them, right? It's like, oh yeah, we're going to get to it. Oh, we'll get to it. And as part of, as we're framing our relationships with people, it's like, hey, how persistent do you want me to be with this? Is this like one time and
Right.
you're going to handle it? Or is it, hey, we're pretty bad. We need this monthly. We might even need you to go get us an attorney referral and set up the appointment. And maybe even you attend it because we don't know unless there's actual skin in the game. We might not show up. It's all about that accountability. What do most people do? Most financial advisors, I don't think are patient enough to set those boundaries of like, I've got the skill set, the planning background. I love math. I love, the investments. I love the whole planning side of it, but I'm at your disposal. How can I best support you? And quite frankly, sometimes you ask those questions to the clients that you're sitting with and they don't know really how to answer them, which is kind of funny. But deeper into the relationship, you kind of start to pick up on people's patterns and tendencies and how long they want to talk about something. When is it good time to skip over it? What are they interested in? What are they not interested in?
Right.
Yeah. So it's as much as it's about the technical standpoint of what is good financial planning, what is good financial health, there's also that relationship side that I don't know if a lot of people really focus on because it's not traditionally a part of the job.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think if you're a client or you're somebody who's looking to work with a financial advisor, there's a couple of things that stand out to me as wanting to ensure that they're working in your best interest, right? Is probably the number one thing in my mind, is making sure that you are working with someone who has a fiduciary responsibility. They have to act in your best interest, right? That's important. One of the things that our firm harps on, and it's been great for me, is being committed to like lifetime of learning. It's not just, hey, got my CFP, it's quite a bit of studying. I'm good to go. I'm just going to give advice based on that, test I took in 2025 for the rest of my life. It's no, you need to be up to date on anything new. I mean, things happen quick with government policy and tax laws and all sorts of changes. So that's what I look at as somebody looking to work with a financial advisor is, yeah, it might be the investment management, it might be some of the financial planning, but more than anything, it's you don't have to spend the time doing the research, staying on top of an ever-changing financial landscape. So that's all I had initially prepared.
I've
Is there
got
anything you'd want to
I've
talk
got one
about?
for you, Tyler. So
Okay.
I was on the golf course a couple of weeks ago. It was, maybe first or second hole. One of the guys we were golfing with in the foursome was like, "Oh, hey, what do you do for work?" Like, "Yeah, sure, I'm a financial advisor." Like, "Oh, well, hey, I want to talk to you." We go to the next tee. He's like, "Well, what do you think about SMCI? They make the racks for Nvidia." That's really not that's not what we're about, right? Like, I think that there's this romanticized view of what financial advisors are, and there are some people that are out there, right, that really dive deep into evaluating individual companies based on forward-looking assumptions, momentum, cash flows, what are the PE ratios at, what's fair market price, strictly an investments guy. I mean, some people look at us as like, "Oh, wow, that guys are going to be able to forecast and project and like, pick the winners." It's just, we're not that, right? I mean, there have been studies done, right? At the end of the day, we're really steering into good financial planning principles. We're steering into the investment strategy that's going to, it's not going to win every single year, right? Because if you win every single year, there's going to be some years where you're the biggest loser. But as a whole, we're playing the long game here. And that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to do for our clients. So we're not the top stock tip of the day. It's, hey, let's guide you through some of these financial decisions. Hey, I'm going to give you A, B, here are the ramifications of both. It's really up
Right.
to you to decide. And then at the end of the day, like if you throw your hands up, it's like, okay, then we'll go with this one.
I think it's a great point. I mean, it's probably the most common question I get from a non-work area. It's really two things, and you kind of brought the conversation full circle, but it goes back to an advisor fit. It's number one, as an advisor, who do I want to work with? Well, it's people who I can add value to their life, right? If they're just want specific stocks that they're going to go invest in, I'm not the guy. I can't add value to their life in that way because I'm not doing the technical research. And even if I was, you mentioned the studies, it's unlikely that I would actually add any value telling them to go invest in these five stocks as is. But then number two, it's when I'm working with clients that are, focused on just stock picking or just performance and don't really have a desire to dive into the financial planning aspect where I feel like I add a lot of value to their life. It's not that I'm not willing to try to work with them, but it makes the client advisor relationship a lot harder when we look at it over the course of 20 years. Sure, we could do it for a year or two, but if you're unhappy in every year where performance isn't exactly, where you want it, or if you have unrealistic expectations, yeah, like that makes it a lot harder on both of us to build a relationship from there. So
Yeah.
I think it's a great point. Up next, I know you sent over an interesting video on the buy now, pay later, interest free. So
I'm excited to kind of talk about that.
I'm excited to go to Chipotle tonight and buy a $15 burrito for $3. And then $3 next week.
Finance that burrito. I think we've talked this one through. Any final thoughts there?
Nothing for me. That was fun.
Perfect. Thanks to everybody for listening. That's episode 3 of The Long Game. If you are looking for a positive advisor-client relationship based in education, setting expectations, and open communication, please reach out to Tyler or myself. But we'll catch you next week. Thanks.